with another edition of So What Success Stories. And that's stories of people who have been successful in spite of any challenges they face in their lives. And I'm super excited today because I am talking to my longtime friend, my soror, my big sister, Tiffany Bellafant Steward. I met Tiffany, I met you. Oh, I met you before college. I met you.
High school.
Yep. My junior year of high school when we skipped school and came to AKA week. And we got to see Tiffany when she became a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And that seeing her and spending time with her and a few of her line sisters showed me that's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. So we go way back. But Tiffany has become so much more to me. So much more to me in the time that we've gotten to know each other, especially in my time during at the University of Memphis. So let's just get right into this. Tiffany is the Director of Advising and First Year Initiatives for the Tennessee Board of Regents, but she has had a long career in higher education, which she'll talk to us a little bit about. So we'll just get right into the interview. Hey, Tiffany.
Hey, Summer. So good to see you.
So good to see you too. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely.
Tell me, yes, girl, tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. I was actually counting years earlier today and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been in higher ed since 1998. So, I mean, that's like 23 years plus years of experience in higher education. And I didn't even know what that was initially growing up. I mean, I thought education was education. It's like,
right.
K through 12. Whatever. So I didn't even know there was something called, post-secondary, which we refer to as higher education. But I started my career at University of Memphis as a student, undergraduate student, and had an opportunity to be a graduate assistant. And that's how I jumped into higher ed. I talked to a lot of students in my lifetime, and I definitely use my story as a way to help them move forward, to kind of overcome some barriers and obstacles that I had to face, because I did have some good people around me that gave me good information and wisdom. But I didn't have like one person to just say, you do this, you do that, you do this. So I try to be that for the students that I work with, and even family and friends who reach out to me that need that. But my background, I started at University of Memphis. I worked in fraternity and sorority life as a GA, worked with some amazing people in that department, one of which is our friend, Bud Ritchie. And so he is the one that got me interested in this as a career.
Really?
Yes, it's solely his fault, I'd say. He's just a remarkable person, and he really got me to thinking, hey, I could do this. And so I ended up having an opportunity to work as an interim coordinator of fraternity sorority life when we had a leadership change. And so I kind of moved up a little bit and got to work more directly with him, and learned a lot from him, and said, hey, I think I may want to pursue this. So I did that for a couple years, and then I said, I need to leave the nest. That's one of the things I try to challenge myself in that way. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna leave. And another person from Memphis, at the time was our Vice President of Student Affairs, Don Carson. He gave me some really good advice. First of all, he encouraged me to leave the nest. And then secondly, he told me, just make sure as you move out into your career, you make sure you have people under you. So, and no one ever told me that. I never thought about supervising people and how that would impact me, and how the things I learned as an undergrad and even starting in my career could help me later, years later, when I was in that type of role. But he gave me that advice, and I still remember to this day. And so I left there, and I went to a school called Northern Kentucky University. And I went there, and I was over there fraternity sorority life.
I didn't know about this, Tiffany.
I know, I have a little story. So I worked there. I worked with fraternity sorority life. I did student life. And I was over like community service initiatives in the office as well. It was a very close knit team of people. Northern Kentucky is the most northern point of the state of Kentucky, which essentially is across the river from Cincinnati. So it's really like the greater Cincinnati area. So I worked there for a couple of years and learned a lot there and got to do a lot of different things that I probably would not have had an opportunity to do, but being in that central location, like the Ohio, I was able to do some stuff in Indiana, more in Ohio, and really was networking and not even realizing how much I was able to do that. And we can get into that a little later.
Sure.
Yeah. So from there, I took a little hiatus off and moved to New Jersey and kind of got out of higher ed for a few months and worked like in a pharmaceutical marketing company.
Tiffany, I must have been really focused on my life. I thought I knew you. I'm like, wait a minute. I guess that's probably when I was trying to start my career and trying to.
Probably.
Wait.
I'm always, people always say you're always off doing stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of am. Like, I don't sit still. So yeah, had a chance to I lived in New Jersey, like right by New York City briefly, and worked in that field. Kind of just jumped in there through like some temp work, and then they were like, hey, we want to move you up. Someone was leaving. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to stay here and do this or if I want to go back to the South. I mean, I love the South. I'm a Southern girl. Like I've been a lot of places, but I just like the South. That's just my cup of tea. And so I ended up coming back to Tennessee and then working as the director of student life at Columbia State Community College, which is my hometown. So I actually got to move back home, which I was on the fence about that, but I'm really glad I did that because it really enabled me to reconnect with family and people in my community that I hadn't seen in years. So it was a really good opportunity for me. But I knew I wanted to get back to four-year institution. So I worked at Columbia State for a few years, and then I had an opportunity to work at Tennessee State University as their director of new student orientation and first-year programs. And I worked in that role probably about 8 years. Loved it, loved everything about that experience. And then I was promoted to an assistant vice president for student success. And I was over our first year programs, our advisement, our what's called learning support, or our remediation areas and tutoring, as well as some other completion initiatives. And so I stayed there about 12 years.
Tiffany, these numbers don't add up. You've been working 50 years.
Well, I just stay one place longer than anywhere else. Everywhere else was like 2, 3, 4 years.
Wow.
So I crammed a lot into these 23 years.
You really, really have. That is so impressive. And I'm thinking back to the beginning part. So I did meet you when I was a junior in high school, but I feel like I really got to know you when you did take that graduate assistant position in Greek affairs at the University of Memphis. And that's when I was in Greek affairs and I was in student activities too, because I can remember so many conversations that we had in the leadership office.
Oh yeah, I remember.
That's when I'm like, okay, that's when you became way more than my soror. My soror is huge and my friend is, but that's when you became a mentor to me, where I'm like, okay, I can really learn a lot from this lady. And so I'm really, really grateful.
What's interesting is, so, I think a good mentorship is when, you're learning from each other. And so, it shouldn't be a one directional type of exchange. And so what I think all the student leaders, when I was at Memphis and at student leadership office, what y'all didn't know is I was learning a ton from you all.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, I know I was looking up to you too, though. I'm like, that's great. That is great. It was really cool. It was really cool. Honestly, as a young Black woman too, to see a woman in that position, and I knew how liked and respected you were. Not just by me, but by everyone, including the people you named, Bud, Richie,
Yes.
and Dr. Carson, who are still good friends of mine to this day. Both
Mhm.
of them are. So I know the influence they had on you because they've had major influence on me too. So let's
Absolutely.
get into these questions so you can
Okay,
share
let's do
more
it.
about your story. So in this program, I have what's called the So What Success System. And
Mhm.
that's learning how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices so that you can achieve so what success. And that is that success no matter what challenges you face. And
Mhm.
Tiffany, throughout your life, and just even what you've already shared, you've unknowingly implemented the So What system.
Mhm.
And that's how you have been successful in your life. And so I'm just going to ask you a few questions that will help you reveal how you have implemented that system and how you can sit there smiling through the challenges that you've been through and successful on the other side of them. So my first question is about obstacles, overcoming obstacles. Share some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome, and maybe share some tips on how you've overcome those obstacles.
Sure. So, my background, and I always say, everybody has a story, something from their background that really created them into who they are today. And so when I was growing up, I proudly tell people I was a first generation college student. Like
So do I.
I'm so proud of that. I grew up with my parents divorced when I was very young. I was probably in kindergarten or something. And my mother was terminally ill. She had lupus and had a lot of different health battles growing up. And so, but one of the things my mom and my family, like I have a very large, my mom has 10 siblings. So I had a very large network of uncles and aunts and tons of cousins, like cousins my age, older, younger. We were very close knit, and our community was close knit. So other families, so everybody kind of looked out for each other. It's like one of those, you grow up, you can run around outside because somebody's parents knew where you were.
I'm a small town girl too, with a lot of cousins too, so I get it.
Yes. So somebody knew where you were. So, but really, those were people that, were really my early supporters, like those were people that looked out for me. And, sometimes they told on me for doing things and sometimes they corrected behavior, but they really taught me a lot. And I remember it was a lady on my grandmother's street who was like a deacon in the church. And she was, I'm sure her intent was to increase the youth in the church. I'm positive that's what she was trying to do. But she would just get us to church all the time and take us all these different places. And her name was Ms. Reynolds. And she'd feed us and do all these really sweet things for us. But what she was doing was giving us the opportunity to really solidify a spiritual foundation that we may not have necessarily gotten. But the way she did it was brilliant. She got all these kids together and we just hung out. But so growing up, I had a good childhood. Even though I did have to overcome things with my mom, who was ill and she didn't work, she was disabled. So there were definitely, financial hurdles. She would be hospitalized for, weeks at a time. So a lot of different personal things, but the people around me tried to make sure I remained positive and kept pushing forward. So that's really, I think, how I built some resilience, was through that experience. I didn't even know what that was then,
Right.
but I was like, okay. And so I remember in high school, I had an opportunity to interview for an Inroads kind of pre-college program. And
I was in Inroads too.
we're Inroads too. Yeah. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to do it. And I was like, we got to drive to Nashville, like 1 week at a month. I'm like, that'll be fun, So let's do it. So I did that and went through that program and just met all these kids, mostly from Nashville, because Columbia, where I'm from, is about a 45-minute drive into downtown Nashville. So I met all these students from all over, like Middle Tennessee, like Murfreesboro, Nashville, Henderson, like just all these little cities around Lebanon, all this stuff. And so we did that for a summer, and then the next summer, then all school year, I think that was our junior year. And then in the senior year, they basically prep you to interview for internships. So I had my first internship before I even started college. And because of that, I was very driven. It was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go to college because I want to get an internship and get a nice job. And so it just all kind of meshed together. I don't think anyone at home ever said go to college,
Right.
but it was all these other people, and the guidance counselor at school, like, hey, you should take advantage of this, or have you applied for college, that kind of thing. And so at the time, I really wanted to go to Spelman College. I didn't know a whole lot about Spelman, but I knew enough. Like, I was like, this is where I want to go. But once I started doing research into colleges, I said, well, my mom is disabled. I don't think my dad was employed at the time. I was like, it's just too expensive. And I was like, I don't want to put that kind of burden on them, or I get accepted and I don't go, I can't go. Cause I didn't understand, it's not just the out of, like, you can get scholarships.
Right.
It's a lot of different dynamics. No one was there to tell me that.
I
So
can relate to that too.
yeah, so it was like, I don't know. And so I did a college tour and went to a few schools in the state, and I pretty much said, I'll go somewhere in the state. And so I was looking at more schools on the east side of the state, even though that was not my cup of tea. And then I remember going to Columbia State to a college fair, and a friend said, we were walking around, and she said, I want to go to University of Memphis. And I was like, I don't really know much about Memphis. I don't know if that's where I want to go. And so I was talking to the recruiter. They ask you, what's your your GPA and your ACTs, SAT scores, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, he said, you qualify for a scholarship. And I said, yeah, really? And I was like, yeah, right. I'm like, this guy's just talking to me. He said, let me get your information. I was like, fill out an application. I'm like, whatever. But one of the things that happened was he invited us to a college visit. So at that time, Memphis would bring all these students in. They were Black students because they were trying to get their Black enrollment up. And so they brought all these Black students in, and we got to stay with them in their residence halls, and we got to tour the campus and do all these activities. And I was like, I'm going to school there. I'm going here. I don't care about anything else. This man told me I got a scholarship. I need to call him. So I found that guy and I said, do I qualify? He said, we have your, at that point I had applied and everything. He said, yes, you do. You have the test. I got your transcript. I got your test scores. You do. And shortly after that, I got a letter. So I was like, yes, I'm going here. So, I'm telling people this, but I don't think people really believe me. They were like, you're going where? I'm like, yes, I'm going. And so I ended up in Memphis, and one of my good friends to this day was somebody I had met through Inroads in Nashville. Her name's Kim Mentor Perry. And so I found her, and it was another woman named Tiffany Owens who was in Inroads. And so I found them.
I didn't know both of them were in Inroads. You knew them through Inroads.
That's how I know them. So I said, I know them, right? And so I connected with them, and Kim was really strong, both of them very strong students, and had, their parents there to really guide them through the process. So I just connected with people who I knew what was going on. I knew that pretty early on, let me connect with these people and see what I can learn, what I need to do.
It's all about being resourceful when you don't have that growing up, and so many students don't, right?
Right,
So
right.
many don't have people who can show them, who love them, but just don't know how to navigate college or any type of post-secondary opportunity. So I think that's such
Yes.
good advice. I think you also touched on something else that is our responsibility. So
Mhm.
you talked about the lady in your community who brought you to church and laid that foundation for you, and other people who saw things in you. So that's what I like to do, and I know you do too. And
Mhm.
hopefully everybody who watches this continues to see how important those small things are, as an adult, that you can do to help a student, a young person who doesn't even know that they need that
Yeah.
type of spiritual foundation, or guidance, or support, or love, or nurturing, and how some small experience to you may be major and life changing to them. So
Right. I think it's important to really just take time and listen to people. One of the traits that I think I have, and a lot of people recognize it, I'm a true observer. Like sometimes people read it wrong when they meet me, but I'm going to just kind of sit back and I'm going to watch. But I'm paying attention. Like I'm listening, I'm observing, like the active listening skills. That's what I'm doing. And I may not say a lot, but I'm really taking in a lot. And so that is one of the things I always did. I just listened. A lot of times I see students, they're so emotional about whatever that challenge is that they're facing or that barrier, they don't listen. And so I always try to like get them, I listen to them. That's the first start. Like, let me listen to what you have to say and acknowledge that. And that normally disarms a person enough to then listen to you. But a lot of times people talk at people and the message is missed.
right, you're absolutely right. And you
Mhm.
can tell why you're so successful in working in education, working with young people, because you're exactly right. Well, I'm so talking about obstacles and overcoming obstacles, and you spoke about your mom,
Mhm.
and that's something I remember, that I remember that about your mom. I remember when you lost
Yes.
your mom,
Yeah.
and um and I only want to talk about this because I know people who will watch this who have
Mhm.
dealt with similar losses and have
Yes.
not been able to overcome that. And so can you speak about that and how you were able to deal with that? Because Tiffany, I was just getting to know you at
Yes.
that time, and I remember, like, I remember thinking to myself, how in the world is she still going and still smiling and still positive? And of course you've
Yeah.
continued to go, and so can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So my mother passed it was January 1998, January 19th, 1998, which was the last semester of my senior year. So the one of the things that I knew I needed to do because of my scholarship, I knew I needed to finish school in 4 years. I was like, there's no more money. I gotta finish. So I was like on track. Like I was, like I said, I know they said take 12 credits. I'm taking 15 to 17.
I took 21 semester, I understand.
I was like, you will not keep me here any longer. So I was definitely driven in that regard. And most of my peers were as well. But I have realized since then that's not necessarily the case with students. So I think I was around what I'm trying to say is I feel like I was around some exceptional people. So it wasn't just me, it was them.
I
It was
got you.
probably more them than me. But so when that happened, I had some really good friends. The way we connected through the Gotros. So Dorothy was a really good friend of mine. Kim was a very good friend. So my friends and my line sisters, my sorority sisters, but also even like the university, like the Greek community, really just helped me up. I would be completely honest with you.
Awesome.
I when that happened, I definitely went through a depression. I didn't know I was depressed. It took many years later for me to realize I was depressed. Like I probably should have went to some counseling. And so what I always tell people now that deal with loss, whatever kind of loss it is, if it is to the point that it's disrupted how you normally function, I highly recommend seeking some therapy. Because it's going to help you talk and deal with some things that maybe your friend or maybe, another adult can't help you get through, or person in general.
Sure.
So I always tell people, like, talk to people. I know for me personally, I just dug deep into that spiritual foundation that I had. And then I said, what am I going to do next? So that's always the question for me is I've done those little strength finders, futuristics, like high off the charts for me. So I always think about the future. And when I realized that that was one of my traits, it really stemmed from growing up, because when I was going through challenges in my life, the way I got through them was that I thought about what's going to happen in the future. And so that's what I did. I focused. I said, what do I want to do? A lot of times I didn't have the answer. And I knew Dean Linda Hall just out of the blue called me. I graduated. I was a journalism major, broadcast journalism major. I had interned. I'd done internships all through my college experience, but my first broadcast internship was my senior year, and I hated it. I don't see myself working at a news station. I don't want to move to like New York City. I just didn't feel I was in a good place to do something like that. And so I said, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And so Dean Linda Hall called me and said, hey, have you thought about going to grad school? And I said, no.
Wow.
And she said, this was randomly like in August of 98. And she's like, there's a graduate assistantship position down the hall in student leadership. And she's like, I think you'll be great for it. And I've recommended you, but you need to get into grad school. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so I literally, like, the next week took the GMAT and got the score and got into grad school. So, you're talking about people, just God putting angels in your life, like the right people. And so she is the person that really opened that door for me. And I just think about that, Dean Linda at the time, she was the admin for Dean Holman. And so she knew all the students because she sat in that office and she engaged with everyone. And she was very active and she knew everybody. And so I just think about how she just thought about me.
Yeah.
And just called me. I don't know who gave her my number, but I'm so grateful, whoever gave her my number, but she just randomly called me. And so it really does matter how you walk and how you interact and how you engage with people every single day.
Because you never know. I say that too. You never know who's watching and who. I used to say that when I taught my class at the University of Memphis too, like people would always ask me, and I'm sure any adult, and you get this too, do you know somebody for XYZ position? Can you recommend somebody? Mm-hmm. And I tell my students all the time, you never know when you've been denied an opportunity. You would never even know, because I didn't say your name because you don't show up to class on time or you don't do your assignments on time. Right. Whereas I could have, like Miss Linda did for you, say, oh yeah, I know somebody. I know the one. Yeah. And she's still there, and she's still being a blessing to students all these years later. It's amazing. And
her own personal journey is just remarkable. Like I said, when I was there, she was the admin. I think she left for a little bit of time when I worked there, but she went on, got her education, and came back. And she's the dean.
She's the dean.
I know, it's just amazing. But, I think to your point, people as an instructor, because you've taught, you notice three kind of students, right? Or three kind of, and you do this just in general. You notice people who are consistent, right? Like they may not say a lot, they may not do it, but if they show up on time, they're there, present, they're doing what they're supposed to do. You notice those people. Yep. You notice the exceptional people, of course. You notice them. Those are I call those the stars. You notice the stars, and then you notice the people that don't do what they're supposed to do. Yep. The three things. So you notice almost everyone, and so you have to really decide which group do you want to be in. And it's okay if you're not the star, but if you're not the star, you better be consistent. You
Yep.
better show up to class. You better sit in that same spot. You better, turn in your work.
Yeah,
whatever.
and you're, because you're so right, because you said Miss Linda randomly called you, but we both know it wasn't random. It
Right.
was because she had been observing you, and
Yes.
that's so important for people, not just students or young people, for all of us to know. People are always watching. Somebody is always watching, and you may get an opportunity. And I think that's the toughest thing for you people to really understand, is when sometimes you will never ever know that you did not get an opportunity that
That's
was
true.
being talked about behind your back that you could have gotten. Well, Tiffany, that is just awesome. That is that is awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that about your mom, because it's a tremendous obstacle a lot of us face. And a lot of us don't even deal with anything that major,
Right.
and still make excuses of why we're not successful. And it takes me to the next component of a success system is eliminating excuses. And how talk about some of the excuses you did make or you could have made, or that that you got rid of so that you could be successful.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, we all have some kind of shortcoming. Like I know personally, when I graduated, I said, I could have probably made a couple more A's and, gotten a higher academic recognition, or, I could have been more focused during this time. So you can always go back and, make up excuses and think of a million reasons, why you didn't do something. That's never been my personality to do that. I'm constructive. I mean, I think you need to go back and look at when you make mistakes and how you can move forward. But I'm gonna hold myself accountable.
Right.
So
Right.
that for me is the biggest piece, is the accountability. It's being self-reflective and then also being accountable. So when you make a mistake, own your mistake, look at how you could have done things differently, but then move forward. And so that has really been how I've just worked to kind of not make up excuses
Sure.
and how to overcome that. Because I see a lot of people, and especially in education, a lot of students that do that, and they make up a lot of excuses. And you really, until you really can figure out as a person, how do I move out of that and stop making up these excuses? Like I think about that all the time, and I'm like, well, what if I had just kind of like just glazed over something I did wrong and said, oh, well, it was this person's fault, or,
Right.
oh, I didn't have this, I didn't have money, I didn't have a parent that, went to college that could tell me how to do something. But the thing is, the people who did know everything, who did have a parent, really, you still had the same information available to you. I may have had to work a little harder, listen harder, read more, push myself more. But at the end of the day, it was my choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how, you really have to figure out, how do I move through life and own up and accept my shortcomings? How do I learn from that? And how do I hold myself accountable?
Right.
And so that's how you get through stop making excuses.
I agree. I completely agree, because we all have reasons, valid reasons, justifiable reasons why we could not be successful or why we can't do some things. But when you can get past the point of you seeing it as a reason and justifying it within yourself and say, no, this is just an excuse. Because, both of us, I can think of plenty of examples of, like, if you didn't go to college, that's understandable. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
understandable that Tiffany didn't go, right?
Right,
It would
right.
have been understandable for me not to go.
Absolutely.
And then we're just talking about college, but there's so many other aspects. But when you said, no, I want to go, I said, no, I want to go, then you eliminate all the barriers and you make it happen.
Make it happen. And it may not be easy either. Your journey may be harder, and you may hit a lot of walls. But the thing is, you got to come up, you got to pick yourself up and keep moving through it. Figure out another way, and move through it. I'm currently in a doctoral program, and I'm writing my dissertation. And just recently had a huge, like when I tell you, I feel like a door like knocked me probably to the floor and through it, with the issue. I was down about it. I mean, like I was for it, but I gave myself a day. I said, I'm gonna be upset about this a day. And, and I'm gonna keep moving. But what I did is I said, you know what? There's always a way through something. Always. It's always a way. And I just started lining up like 10 ways I could approach something in my 10 ways. Okay, which ones are the most viable? Let's try these. And you really have to do that. Like, I know it sounds weird, but that's what you have to do, because nothing worth having is ever easy to
get. You said so many things that I was like, oh, you're in my head. It doesn't sound weird. It all sounds wise.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, think about your greatest accomplishments, the things you're most proud of, they weren't easy to get. Like they weren't. So if you recognize you're going to have the challenge, like it's inevitable. It's part of life. You're going to have a barrier. You're going to have a challenge. It's really how you navigate through that to get to where you're trying to go. And so when you know that, when you hit the challenge, like I said, I gave myself a day. I said, I'm in the dumps. I'm mad. I'm in my feelings about this, but I will get over this. Now, truth be told, I still haven't completely figured it out, Summer, but I'm much closer to I'm much closer. I've made some headway in one way. Some other things have opened up. So the path I thought I was going to take to get there, I'm not going to take that path. Now this path is like this, and this. I thought it was going to be boom, boom, maybe this way and then this way. It's not that, but that's okay, because I will get to the end. It's not a matter of if, it's when I get to the end, and it's going to be challenging to get there. I call it my academic hazing experience. I will be so relieved when I'm done. When they say you can defend, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fall on my knees.
It's so exciting.
But yeah, but I'm just saying, but that's how you get through excuses and those really hard barriers.
I love that you said that, Tiffany, because I actually had a speaking engagement this morning. I said one of the exact same things that you said. You said you gave yourself a day. And I talked about my life and part of my journey. And that's what I said. I gave myself a time period too. And I think this is applicable in any situation when we get down. We need to grieve, and we need to mourn, and we need to allow ourselves to be sad or down or even depressed. But we need to put a limit on it. We need to put a time limit on it and figure out how the so what, the little words up under is so now what. You talk about being futurist. That's me too. It's okay. So now what? What are we going to do? How are we going to move forward from this? And like you said, now your process is like that, but you're also going to learn some new things, maybe even about yourself. Right. Your topic.
Right. And I think you made a good point when you said, like, when you're talking about allowing yourself to grieve or be sad or whatever. Well, that's, to me, and part of when you're futuristic is one of the things you really have to learn is how to like accept that. You got to accept the present, which is very difficult for a person that's always like, when you're aspirational. That's why I just like, you're aspirational. So it's hard to accept the present. But when you allow yourself to do that, that's accepting the present. Whether it's any emotion, is whether you're happy, whether you're sad or depressed or you're grieving. That's just a human, and it's you accepting the present, which future is not promised, but the present, it is. It's now. It's here and now. So you have to allow yourself to recognize and acknowledge the present.
And I'm glad you said that too, because that's something I had to learn. I had to force, because I am just like you described, and have been a little less understanding even of other people who couldn't just go look to the future, Yeah. And so I have had to really focus and kind of train myself to think like that and focus on the present and allow myself to feel. And I'm glad you made that point too. Even the happiness, that the recognizing in the present, like, accept this accomplishment. It's good. You don't have to move on to the next just yet.
Like, how many times have you actually gotten to where you were trying to go? Like, you achieved the goal and then you're like, you're not that happy about it. Like, it's not what you thought it was. It's not whatever that is. And then you like, I worked up. All I thought about was the future, the future, the future. And then you get there and you're like, but then when you look back and you like, I remember this, and that was amazing. I didn't properly celebrate it, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And so that is why we have, and it's hard. I know, because I'm just like you. I'm like driven. I look toward the future, and I really had to do some soul searching to say, you know what, I gotta also enjoy today.
Right.
I woke up, I'm like moving, I'm doing stuff, I'm breathing air. I had to accept this too, because it's a gift as well. Just like the future is, but today is even better because
Right.
I'm doing it right now. So yeah, you really have to do that. And to me, when you do recognize the present, you don't beat yourself up as much because you're not where you want to be, because you're living in the moment and you're enjoying that current moment.
Right. It really, really is important. And that is wisdom. Like I said, that's a lot of wisdom that I feel like I've gained, and you definitely have gained and you share. And so then you make the choice to do that, right? So in each situation, you make the choice to appreciate the moment, or to allow yourself to grieve in the moment.
Right.
But that's a choice. And so that's the third component of the SOA success system, is calculating choices. Talk about some of the calculated choices that, I mean, you've moved all over the place and you've been in several different jobs. I know those are some choices that you had to calculate.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the choices you've had to calculate to get to where you are.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was younger, definitely more of a free spirit. I think when you have more responsibilities, you have to focus down a lot more. So I would definitely have considered myself a lot more spontaneous. So it's like, hey, I want to try this. So I don't have anything holding me back. So I feel like I took full advantage of my young adult life, I'll put it that way, because I lived different places. I met a lot of different people. And I never, like even in inroads, you learn like how to network. And I was always uncomfortable with that. Like, I will be completely honest. I was like, I don't want to go up to people to find out how they can help me. Like, I was just like, this makes me so uneasy. And I'm not like, I am a social person, but I almost thought I wasn't, because like this whole, back then, I don't think anybody teaches that anymore. But back then, that whole concept of networking, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. And I don't like it. It just felt so unauthentic.
Yep.
And so, but what I learned about myself is I am an excellent networker. I like meet a lot of people. And I like to learn. I'm a good listener, so I like to learn things about people. But when I do that in my brain, and I didn't really realize I did this until I got a little bit older, what I do is I make connections. So one of my strength finders is connectedness. Go figure. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I did this. But what I do is I connect things. So when you share something with me, I'm automatically connected to someone else. So if someone walked up to me and said, I'm trying to be a speaker, a nationally known speaker, and I'm trying to get into that business, I'm gonna be like, I know somebody, her name's Summer Owens. Like, that's what I do. Like, I am a connector in that way. And so
I think we're the same person.
I think we are. We have a lot of similarities. And so because I have that, I do that. I'm able to make some very calculated decisions in terms of my career. So I have hit several barriers, even in higher ed. Being a woman, being a Black woman. I worked at a HBCU. I did not attend a HBCU, so I was kind of considered an outsider. But I overcame that too. But I did hit some barriers. I still don't have my doctorate, and I'm like in a lot of leadership development programs and have moved up in management. But I had to be very strategic about how I did that. First of all, when people were like, well, you need if you want to be, I'll give you an example. I wanted to be an assistant or an associate vice president at TSU. I watched people who did that. I knew I could do it. I said, I can do this. I can do it well. And I just kept like doing different things to build my skills. And, I started like a doc program and I'm doing all these things. And I was like seeing people advance. And I was like, well, why am I not advancing? Like I'm getting all these recognitions. I'm doing all these things. People tell me I'm great. They're like working for me. They're happy with my output. Well, why can't I advance? And I was like, okay, let's think about this. And I said, okay, I know I don't have these things, but I have these things. And I'm better at some of these things than other people who have moved on. So that is not an excuse. So I said, that is not an excuse. And I said, what am I good at? Like, what are my strengths? And so what I started to do is I said, I need to look at an opportunity. And somebody left, and I said, I need to position myself to make my boss say, I'm gonna give her this whole other woman's area, let her keep her area, and give her a different title. So I said, how am I gonna do this? So my colleague was a good friend. I said, I need you to tell him I need to take over your area. I never done what she did. I'm just being honest. I had never done that. I said, but I knew I could do it. I said,
right.
I said, when you go in and he says who should take your, who should be your person who takes this role, you tell him me. She did. And so what I did is I said, I'm going to go write a job description. And I wrote that job description and I had a couple people look at it. So by the time he called me in the meeting and he says, I want to put you in as interim of that department until we can fill it, whatever. I said, well, I don't think you should fill it. And he said, why? And I said, because I think this is what you need to do. I gave him that job description and I told him why I was going to be the person he should give that opportunity to.
Boss.
I said, this man is probably laughing at me, right? Like, I was like, he's probably like, wow, she's got some guts to come here and say this. And I'm doing it anyway. And so he took a chance. He did, he did it. He went to bat and he made it happen. And so that's how I was able to get that promotion. But I had to be very strategic and I had to make a calculated decision on how I was going to approach it. I said, I can keep trying to go through these traditional channels and it's just not happening for me. I can leave and probably do it. I don't want to leave. Like, I want to do it here. So how do I open that door here? Is not, I had applied internally for some stuff and I hadn't even gotten an interview. Like it was internal. I was like, no, I'm going to make this happen for myself. And so
I love it. I love it. That's an awesome story. That is an awesome story. I think that's just cool. I think that is really, really cool. And it's a testament of making calculated choices. I also think it's about what the quote, I think it's Oprah, when preparation meets opportunity, that's when success happens. Absolutely. And also when success happens is when you overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices. And
absolutely.
That's so was success. Now, how do you personally define success?
So I personally define success for me is when you're taking your talents and your strengths, whatever you perceive those as being, and then you're actually living out those things. Whether it's you want to make a certain amount of money, whether you want to be a great mom or a parent, whether you want to be a good employee, whatever it is, or a community leader, whatever, it's really just taking your strengths and your passion and how do you live that out to the best of your ability. Yep. And that's defined by you. And that's the thing, is sometimes we define our success by other people. and then we're never fulfilled. But if you're living out who you are, which for me and doing higher ed, which I said, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know that was a career, but I love it. I always tell people, I feel like I never left college. I went to college and I never left until recently. But I loved it. It was just a community that I enjoyed being in and I thrived in. So for me, I feel like I was successful because of that. But I feel like just by defining that for yourself, if you want to be a millionaire and that's how you measure your success, if you hit 1 million, then hopefully you're happy. But at the end of the day, you have to have fulfillment and be happy where you are.
Okay, one last question. In a sentence or two, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to be successful, however they define it, but they're running into obstacles? And this could be a student, this could be a young professional, or this could be someone who's later in their career or in their life, but they want to be successful and they're finding some obstacles. What advice would you give?
Yes, so my advice would be maintain your focus on your goal or whatever you're trying to achieve. Maintain that laser focus on that, and each day do something toward that. So you have to be consistent. Good things don't happen overnight, so remain consistent. Even when it's hard, remain consistent, and that tenacity and the small bits of progress will get you to where you want to go.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Tiffany. It was so good to talk to you. I appreciate you sharing your insight. Have a good one.
You too.
All right.